Chris Hilton Jr. isn't a household name yet, but he might be the one player that could flip the game against Clemson. We'll talk about it right now on Locked on Clemson.
You are Locked on Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked on Clemson, part-time host and producer over on the flagship station, 105.5 FM, The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked on Clemson your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Big salute out there to my everydayers. You know who you are. You know how we do it here on Locked on Clemson. Exclusive Clemson content Monday through Friday, every single week. And if you're new to the show, welcome in. Hope you enjoy it. 75% of viewers and listeners are not yet subscribed. So what are you waiting for? Hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And as you see here on today's show, we have a lot to discuss with the big matchup against LSU, Cade Klubnik, and some of the other rivals and matchups that we may see and we will see later on in the season in segment 3. To start the show off, though, I wanted to get into continuing to look at the matchup with the LSU Tigers and what possible X factors could be out there, could be facing Clemson going into this game, because I want you to be the most informed Clemson fan going into this season. And to do so, we have to look at the opponent for week 1, and that is LSU. I know that I have talked, about the different position groups, their strengths, their weaknesses, where I felt like LSU has an advantage, where I feel like Clemson has an advantage. One specific player that we went over yesterday was DJ Pickett on the defensive side of the ball. Young freshman guy, I think is going to be a big impact. Maybe not in the first game, but I do feel like he's got the talent to show some things there. Today, I wanted to tell you about Chris Hilton Jr. He finally gets his shot. Wide receiver. He's been waiting his time. He's been fighting through injuries, and that makes him hungry. And when you're hungry and when you've been waiting for your moment to shine, that could be the biggest threat to Clemson winning this game on August 30th. For most of his career, he's really kind of been more of the forgotten man with the LSU Tigers. They've had a loaded receiver room year after year after year. He didn't help himself out, having injuries in and out at the beginning of his career. And then the depth chart and the traffic that was ahead of him, some of the guys like Lacey, Thomas, Neighbors, those other guys that you know their names, they were ahead of him and were able to be more consistent more earlier on in their career. But later on in 2024, towards the end of the season, we started to see why he was such a coveted recruit many years ago. He averaged 27 yards per catch, including a good game against Oklahoma at the end of the season in November, and a great bowl game with Garrett Nussmeier as well. And now with Kyron Lacey gone, he is the next man up at that position for 2025, at that true outside wide receiver position. His first year, really, because, if you look at his stat sheet, if you just look at that, you're thinking, how is this guy going to threaten Clemson? He's not even had 1,000-yard receiving year. No, he hasn't. He hasn't had a 800-yard, 700, 500, 400. He hasn't even had a 300-yard receiving season. So you're probably thinking, Morg, this is how you do me. This is the beginning of the season. You're hyping up a guy that has that is no threat to Clemson. Well, let's take a step back and think about it. I believe he will be a threat to Clemson. First game of the season, the odds are he's going to be healthy and ready to go. You are not getting him in November when he could be injured or dealing with some things. He's banged up from head to toe over his career so far. But this could be the time, the beginning of the season, where those problems are not yet happening or not affecting him. Now, could he have some problems later on in the season? Yeah. But you're getting him, Clemson's getting him the first game of the year. So he should be as healthy as possible. This will be his first time to show out what he can do as a true outside wide receivers. And the LSU Tigers are counting on him to use his track speed, his elite level speed, to torch Clemson on the outside and really stretch the field. It's not about him becoming a 1,000-yard receiver. Could he possibly be the next, legit wide receiver, outside wide receiver that LSU seems to always have? Yeah, he could. But it's about what happens in this Clemson game. That's what we care about the most, is this one matchup. Not what he does over the season, but this one matchup. And it's about what he's going to do and using that speed to the outside. What happens if Clemson loses track of him for just one snap? That's the thing that concerns me the most. A vertical threat like Hilton Jr. changes the way that you cover on the outside, changes the way that you scheme your defense. Safeties have to be very conscious of his speed. They have to play a few steps further back, play that true center field in order to cover off that deep threat, in order to not allow him to get behind you. Chris Hilton Jr. is the kind of guy you do not want behind you, because if you're in his rear view, you're not catching up with him. Corners cannot afford false steps, misassignments. We are thinking this will be a close game. LSU fans that are realistic, not the crazy ones that I get in the comments or over on social media, but the LSU fans that are realistic know that this is more than likely going to be a close game. Clemson is not going to be able to erase him or any of their star players or skill players completely, but they've got to prevent the killer play, the 40, 50-yard play from Chris Hilton Jr. Those cannot happen. Those are called explosives, and you don't want any of those because they will blow up your entire Saturday. Dabo Swinney has preached this for decades. You cannot allow one player to kill you with one play. Chris Hilton Jr. is definitely that kind of player. Explosives shorten the field extremely. You're talking about a team that can go from the 25 to the opposing 30 in one play, and one player that can do that. No matter how consistent your defense is, they could be consistent and play great for 20 snaps. But Chris Hilton Jr. can erase those 20 snaps in one single play and change momentum of a game. He doesn't even have to use physicality because of the speed. He can just, if he can get an open lane, if he can find that false step on the defense, we believe that this is going to be a heavyweight fight. If you believe that, then it's going to be up to guys like Avion Terrell, Clemson's natural cover corner, who's quick to stay in phase with him step by step. But Hilton's size, could play an advantage. Terrell has to win with timing. But to me, no matter if it's Terrell or Hampton, you have to be able to disrupt him. You have to be able to disrupt that timing. And you want to bracket them. You're probably going to have to shade a safety over. The top-down effect. Over top, hold him off. Underneath, bracket him in. That's the only way I see it with this kind of speed from Chris Hilton Jr. Now, my LSU friends out there, you're friends for me for right now until the game starts, I know. But those of you who are watching that are the Go Tigers spelled incorrectly, you know what I'm saying. That this guy's speed is killer. You can try to bracket, but to me, it's going to be about physicality. The best way to win there is Clemson's cornerbacks playing extremely, extremely physical. What about Clemson? They have to play very, very, I wouldn't say perfect, but this is going to be a heavyweight matchup. It could be decided by one mistake. And I'm just warning you right now, if that one mistake ends up being a 40, 50-yard pass to Chris Hilton Jr., unfortunately, you're going to say, hey, Morgan Thomas of Locked On Clemson told me so. And I don't want to be that I told you so guy, but he is definitely a threat stat sheet aside that you have to pay attention to. Now, what about Clemson's own X factor? Clemson has legit players as well, and it all starts with the quarterback position. We'll talk about how he could make a small step forward in 2025 to be extremely better. Tiger fans, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on a big name quarterback or breaking out a running back that dominates in 2025, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. I've used Prize Picks for a couple of seasons now. I love how quick it is to get into the lineup, make changes. Some mornings I'll pick more or less on a few player stat projections before I even get out of bed. Last season, I had a flex play that hit on 4 out of 5 picks, and I still doubled my money. That's a game changer. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. Also, Tiger fans, this show is brought to you by Drip Drop. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving Drip Drop. Drip Drop is doctor-developed, scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half of the sugar of a leading sports drink. My schedule, flips from doing a show, sweating through a flight plan, chasing out my daughter around the house, all in the same day. But Drip Drop makes sure that I keep up with all of it. My favorite go-to flavor right now, I moved on from lemon. I'm now with berry. It hits that perfect balance of flavor without being too sweet, and it's clutch after these long, hot afternoons out on the ramp. I throw in a couple of packets into my flight bag, into my book bag, wherever it be. I never get stuck trying to push through my day running on fumes. You don't want to do that. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head over to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Another guy that's on my list that we need to talk about is Cade Klubnik. And, I've talked to you about how can he be just 10% better? If Cade Klubnik gets 10% better, Clemson won't just be in a playoff race. Cade Klubnik will be in the playoff race. Clemson will be in the playoff race. But Cade Klubnik will be in New York City at the end of the season as a Heisman finalist if he is just 10% better. 10%. That's what you strive for in corporate world, to try to just get incrementally better. Now, you have your stretch goals, maybe 25, but year in and year out, if I were to tell you your business got 10% better, you'd be loving it. If your business got 10% more revenue year over year, you'd be loving it. In 2024, Cade Klubnik put together a really good season where we saw him mature more than he has, at his time here at Clemson. He was extremely efficient and one of the better and most efficient passers that we've seen at Clemson. He threw for 3,639 yards, 36 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, which who would have thought, as wild and carefree as he's been, only 6. Added in 463 yards rushing and 7 more scores with his feet, totaling 43 touchdowns. That production that he had in 2024 ranked him among the top quarterbacks in the country. The biggest question is, what is the natural next step for him? What can he do to take his game to the next level? And I just thought, what is 10% better? You know, a simple 10% bump across the board would put him at over 4,000 yards passing, would put him at 40 touchdowns passing, 36 interceptions, maintaining that, nearly 500 yards rushing. When I say those things out loud, that is, in my mind, Heisman level territory. Clemson's playoff hopes rest on how well Cade Klubnik can take that next step. And the next step is what I'm trying to say is not extremely far away. Now, fans, we know that Dabo has done what he can to get Cade to have the best around him. We always talked about being better for your quarterback, being better around your quarterback. Does he have an offensive line with an offensive line coach that should do that? Yes. Does he have wide receivers that should be better around him? Yes. Does he have running backs that we like the early return so far? There are still questions, but do we like them? Yes. Does he have a defense that can hold up a little better than last year? Yes. Has he made changes on staff and in the roster tweaks to help improve and give Cade Klubnik the best possible chance at not only being the best version of himself, but the best team overall? The offense has to continue to grow and develop, and it starts with Cade Klubnik. If they're going to beat LSU, Florida State, or whoever they're going to get in the college football playoffs, if they get there, the ACC champion, SMU, Syracuse, you got all these games. You got South Carolina, Louisville. These are going to be difficult games this season. A 10% better Cade Klubnik means more explosive plays, fewer mistakes, and to me, one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in the country. The difference between 36 and doing the same and 40 and taking a little bit better, to me, is just 10%. But really, it's still out there. It's not manufacturing anything new. It's converting. We talked about the red zone, turning field goals into touchdowns, flipping field position, using big plays, giving your defense more time because you're sustaining drives. For Clemson, this is going to be the difference between another good season. We all believe Dabo can have a good season. He's consistently the good season master. He's been able to sprinkle in a few championship runs as well, which we are very blessed with as fans. To get back to there, the difference between a championship run and a good season, to me, was still left on the field in 2024. The games that they lost, possibly outside of Louisville and Georgia, there were moments there where Clemson had opportunities to maintain drives and they just couldn't do it. To convert a field goal instead of a field goal, convert a touchdown. They couldn't do it. Can they do it in 2025? Can Cade Klubnik take that next step, win those games, get over 4,000 yards passing, get over 40 yards, 40 touchdowns, get over almost 50 total touchdowns? Cade Klubnik will be right alongside names like Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence. He could be, if he has those numbers, he would be better than Deshaun and right on par with what Trevor Lawrence did when he went to the national championship game against LSU in 2019. So that puts him in the conversation with some of the best quarterbacks in Clemson history, which I know is kind of crazy to think because Cade still feels like that guy who does still have a lot more work, has a lot more left on the table. But to think that this could be the year where it finally comes together. Explosiveness, he already has the efficiency. Being what you were in 2024 is all about being efficient. The explosive was missed. The conversion red zone was missed. 10% improvement, again, doesn't need to be a far-stretched idea. It's just converting those one or two plays each game that you maybe couldn't do in 2024. Cade Klubnik should be as ready as possible. I told you I saw him in person. Thick neck Cade Klubnik is what I'm calling him, because he's been in the weight room. His neck is like massive now. So he's built his body to the best shape he can be in. He's now under Garrett Riley. This is now more familiar under Garrett Riley and his system. He has a wide receiver room that's deeper than we've seen in 5 years. Offensive line that's healthy. Contrary to what the LSU fans want us to believe about Walker Parks, it is relatively healthy, and Walker Parks, we are told, will be fine or is fine. The supporting cast is there. Cade Klubnik just has to make that next step. Can he do it? Well, it's up to him to actually do it. I believe he can. I believe he has an opportunity to do so, and he will do so. Just 10% could be all the difference for 2025. Speaking of expectations, I wanted to talk about Vegas and FanDuel and some of those futures that are out there and what they have been saying about Clemson's biggest rivals in 2025. I want to talk about South Carolina and Miami. Is there hope? Is there hype? Where is the doubt? Where is it right now? If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why with Open Phone, you need it. So you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. For me, try balancing podcasting, radio work, side projects, flight school. I'm juggling all kinds of stuff. I am terrible at missing phone calls. People say, if you want to win $1 million and call me and be sure that I won't answer, call me, because that will be the person to win $1 million. I will not answer for you. I'm sorry. But I used to give out my personal number to be, responsive, but I'm not. So it got messy really fast for me. But with Open Phone, I was able to separate my business needs with my personal needs. I didn't need to get a second phone number. And I've got one number for everything that I need when I'm doing my part-time stuff. And the best part, they have an AI agent that can handle messages and after hours and even common questions. You can have it set up. So that way I'm not losing anything while I'm gone or while I'm recording. See why over 60,000 businesses trust Open Phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Hey, before we jump into the final segment of the episode today, I wanted to talk about something special that I've added in, and it's called the Locked On Clemson Insider Program. Now, if you want more Clemson content, I've got it for you. You'll get one-on-one access to me directly through text message. We can talk about questions that you have about Clemson. I can give you all the insider information that I normally wouldn't say on a podcast. We can talk about it. You can give me your questions and I can use them. I will use them on mailbag episodes. I'd love to be a part of the conversation with you, and we can do so through Subtext. There is a 14-day free trial, so you can check it out. It's risk-free. Just head over to the link in the description for this video and get that one-on-one access through the Locked On Clemson Insider Program. All right, so I looked at FanDuel.com and their research site, because you got a great research site for the futures that are coming up next week. And so I looked at what were some of the bigger plays or some of the recommendations that they had for 2025 with college football. And they happen to have some insight on two teams that one Clemson may face in Miami, maybe not. And then South Carolina, Clemson obviously will face at the end of the season, November 29th. South Carolina, for the FanDuel research site, is getting a lot of hype. Miami, on the other hand, getting a little bit more doubt than South Carolina. Both have great storylines, I think, that will shape how we should think about 2025 and the season for Clemson and how it may come to fruition and be realized by the end of the year. FanDuel has certain betting lines for 2025, and South Carolina's line right now is 7.5 wins, and they're very bullish on them getting the over for that. Showing how strong they had last season, showing what LaNorris Sellers was able to do, knowing that they have a few returning wide receivers. They're very confident and they would be able to go over that 7.5 wins. Miami, on the other hand, has a 9.5 line, and that is a little bit more difficult because you basically have to be near perfect to have 9.5. 10 would be, 2 losses. So you need, 10-2 by the end of the season. That's one of those lines where I feel like they would be the under a little bit less excited about, and they are for Miami. Odds, it seems like I always feel like these bet makers, they know what they're doing. They know what the probabilities are for each team. South Carolina is viewed as an 8-9 win team, and the probability of that is a little bit higher. So that means that the stakes for that November 29th game is going to be even higher. You're going to be talking about a team, if they're 9 wins going into that game, if they're 8 wins going into that game, you're talking about 8-3 going into that game, 9-2 going into that game. That's 2 top 10 teams, in my opinion, at least top 15 teams. If Clemson is also, closer to that 9 wins or 10 wins by the end of the season. And that will raise the stakes for that rivalry game at the end of the season. This year, it's not at Death Valley in Clemson. It is going to be in South Carolina in Columbia. Clemson historically for the past couple of years has done well as the road winner there. So it could be a bigger game, on a national stage because of that ranking, because of that win-loss record. Is South Carolina closing the gap? They beat Clemson last season. I know Clemson fans don't want to talk about it. Are they or are they not? Well, to be honest with you, they have momentum. They went 9-3 in the regular season. They were hot. LaNorris Sellers, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's got NFL buzz now. He's got legs. He's got arm. He's going to be a tough test for Clemson's defense again in 2025. And I have to lean on the fact that probably Tom Allen's going to do a better job than Wes Goodwin did. Man, that was frustrating. Their biggest weakness still seems to be, what is their defense going to be? How aggressive are they going to be in the secondary? And also their offensive line. It seems like South Carolina has taken years and years and years to figure out what they can do. They have all these great quarterbacks, but their offensive line just can't hold up for a whole entire season. So will they be able to figure something out on the offensive line to protect LaNorris Sellers? Now, the good thing is he's more mobile, so he can move around and help himself out. But there's still those doubts for South Carolina. How will they finish and be ready for the end of the season? If they are projected the way FanDuel is showing, they could be one of the better teams in the country going into November, the last game in November. And that would be a really, really tight matchup for Clemson, Dabo Swinney, and it being an end of the season road game. Talking about Miami specifically, before we wrap up the show, Miami has an offensive reset. They don't have their quarterback that they had last season. They don't have their running back. They don't have a portion of their wide receivers. Their offensive line, they still have some stars there, but returning production is a concern. How well will Carson Beck be? He seemed to get worse in 2024 at the end of his time with the Georgia Bulldogs, even though he did beat Clemson at the beginning of the season. Miami has to figure it out. They get a lot of hype. Miami is the preseason hype team. Everybody thinks Miami is going to be this amazing team, and then they end up stubbing their toe once or twice and just not being able to continue the success or be able to reach their expectations by the end of the season. So I'm really curious. They, on FanDuel's research site, are also kind of low on that. They feel like that they will be maxing out at 9 or 8 wins. South Carolina be reaching their most potential at 8 or 9 wins. It's very different how those stories are, because leading into the preseason, there were some experts out there that had Miami above Clemson to start the season off in 2025. So if Miami is struggling to get 8, 9 wins, to me, that's going to hurt their chances of Clemson being able to see them at the end of the season. But, that's why we play the games, because you never really know how it all will work out. I'm curious to see how these futures lines work out, because it does seem like Vegas always knows. They always know. Two different storylines for Clemson's rivals, but thin margins for 2025. Who will rise to the occasion? Who will fall? We'll find out on Saturday. This Saturday is the first week of college football. I know you are hyped and excited about it. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go over and check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I appreciate you so much. To my everydayers, thank you so much for hanging out to the very end of the show. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you at the top of the hill.